Attendance at the third meeting of the Appropriations and Revenue Committee for this session. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell. Senator Funky Fromeyer. Senator Givens. Here. Senator Maiden. Senator Neal. Senator Nunn.
Here.
Senator Rawlings.
Here.
Senator Richardson. Here. Senator Webb. Vice Chair Mays Bledsoe. Here. Chair McDaniel.
Here. Very well. We have a quorum duly constituted to conduct business. We'll go ahead and get started. First item of business this morning is capital renovations. Mr. and Madam Secretaries, if you wouldn't care to come on up. Please identify yourselves for the record, and then if you have testimony you'd like to start with, we would welcome that. And if you want us to just start with questions, we can do that too, whatever suits.
So I'm Holly Johnson. I am the Secretary of the Finance and Administration Cabinet.
And I'm John Hicks, Secretary of the Governor's Executive Cabinet and State Budget Director.
I'm just going to get started. We'll go over some things I think that we've talked about before, but we'll go over some things to give you some information. Of course, the budget for the project is $291.5 million. The cost estimates have been recently updated, and they continue to be within budget. This is the final phase of design. The contractors, again, are EOP, and the construction manager is Messer Construction. The temporary legislative chamber's substantial completion has been pushed back a little bit from what I had previously reported. It is now 4/4/2025, and that has to do with some of the wiring that will be necessary to move some of your voting machines, to get the KET cameras and wiring up, and also we're going to be putting up a canopy between those temporary chambers and the annex. We have several bid packages out for the Capitol building that include the electrical gear and transformers procurement, which is underway. We have site and site utility. Bids are due February 27th of 2025. The roofing and fourth floor structural demolition and modification bids are due April 24th of 2025. Renovation bids are due May 23rd of 2025. And a review of all the bids will occur late May and early June. Construction is slated to start July 7th, 2025, and the roofing and fourth floor work will begin late June of 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We wanted to point out a few concerns that we have with where we are with this project. The primary one is about the project contingency, and that is a phrase we use for unforeseen conditions, right? In a major project like this, in a building that's 115 years old, the project contingency is right now is only at $10.8 million, and we're very concerned about that level, and for these reasons. We have been working now and presented information in various forms about the things that were discovered in the initial investigations of the building, for which need repair at least at some point, but had to be pulled out of the scope of the project in order to stay within budget. So we had, the governor had met with the speaker and the Senate president this past summer to show them kind of that value engineering that was done, where we removed $60 million of items out of the what could be the project. A large portion of that, over $40 million, was regarding the unexpected significant renovations that would be needed to the terraces, to the north, south, and east portions of the terraces there. Far more damage than we thought once they investigated that. So as a part of, as we continue in through this design process, we had learned some things about what needs to be done and what we can't yet do. Now they're not urgent, the terrace reconstruction, but it's something that eventually will have to take place. And as a part of that, the governor had asked for a third party to come in and take a look at the cost estimates and the scope of the project that were examined. And this was a retired project estimator from a major Kentucky-based construction company who came in and took a look, and that was his first conclusion was he was worried about the size of the contingency, about the unforeseen conditions. You don't know what you don't know, type of thing. And so that was one of his primary sources. He also said, boy, if you could do the terraces at the same time you did the building, that would be best, but we don't have the funding to do that. And so, so we've had several communications. After that, we had the governors met with leadership and the chairs of A&R in December to kind of update them on these findings. And the two of them were, as Secretary Johnson just mentioned, at least on the cost estimates of the scope that we have, they appear to be in order. We will see what happens when the bids come in. But the concern about the level of contingency is something that is still a major issue. One of the things that the governor had asked when he's met with leadership of both chambers is get a little bit of feedback, given that information about the size of the contingency and the unforeseen conditions. And the governor's still looking forward to getting that feedback returned, so that one of the next steps, as the secretary had said on the schedule, is that major renovation bid is going to be due May 23rd. So that's a key date, right? We're going to see if the bids come in within budget. But at that time, the feedback that he's seeking from the legislature will help him make the call at that time whether the project can start. If we believe that the unforeseen conditions kind of exceed that $10.8 million that we have. So that's our update today, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary Hicks, first question. You mentioned we don't have the funding to do the terraces with the buildings. Why not?
Because of the price. That's over $40 million that the budget doesn't contain. Now, as a part of the project, the west side of the terrace, because of some of the work we're doing to be ADA accessible, there will be renovation and construction of the west side of the terraces, but the other three we don't have the funds for.
But if memory serves me, I thought when we had initially discussed this, because we did discuss that there's equipment down below there that needs to be moved and different things. I thought this was all part of our original conversation in this.
Well, first, the original scope of the project expected a minor renovation to the terraces, right? But once the investigation came in, it was far more significant. Secondly, on the electrical and mechanical equipment, primarily the mechanical equipment, was going to be put into the basement, but we've subsequently changed that design. We're going to put it into a vault. Basically, we're going to dig up the east side parking lot and locate the mechanical equipment, which is much larger in the current than the old mechanical equipment, and so we're gonna basically create a vault and place the mechanicals there. So the terraces were considered in an original part of it, but the extent of the damage kind of resulted in the inability to fund that within the budget.
So do we have an idea of if we do the terraces with the building, are there savings off of the overall building fund then, or efficiencies that could result in savings if you had the money to do them?
No.
To do them?
No.
Okay, I thought you said that the estimator said it would be ideal to do the terraces while we were doing the
He
building.
did. It was more about the construction and the inconvenience for the public, because we're gonna have a big site location with fencing for the renovation in the first place. And then sometime down the road, when we have to reconstruct the terraces, we're going to do something similar again. So
how far gone are the terraces? I mean, are we 10 years from replacement, 20 years? Do we have an estimate on this? I mean,
I'd say 10 years is a reasonable number. What they've said to us is it doesn't have to happen now, right? There's not a safety concern right now, but it's going to be something that's be needed. So yeah, they didn't put a time period on it, but they did express that if you didn't do it now, you weren't creating a safety issue.
And one more question before I get to the others here. Is it something that could be handled with restoration work at this point versus a total replacement? And if we get too far down the line, we'll be into total replacement, which obviously is more expensive.
They've said no to that. They've used the phrase reconstruction for the terraces. And so I take that to mean, you can't do a little, you have to do a lot.
I mean, I think that the original scope was to try to do a restoration, and when they went in and looked at it and did their investigation, they determined that that was not going to address the issues with the terrace sufficiently.
Okay, very good. All right, first up, I've got Senator Rawlings.
So I served 2 years in the House and now in the Senate. And since I've been down here, I've been looking at the scaffolding, asking questions about it. Would you please elaborate on the cost of it? Was there an upfront cost? Are we paying daily to rent it? Would it have been much better to purchase something like that since it's still remain? And I've got a confluence of questions. Like you mentioned bids. Why weren't these bids done when the scaffolding's up? Why are we still talking about bids 3 years, going on 3 years later? And why are you talking about cables and stretching wires at this point when the scaffolding's been up there so long?
Well, we did not discuss anything particular to the scaffolding that is on the dome. The dome is a separate project. So we're not talking about the dome project. And the scaffolding is part of that project. And we're due to have the scaffolding come down on the dome, I believe, in early 27. The tiles that are required to replace the dome have to be fabricated very specifically, and there was only a few companies that could do that. So we have those tiles are, I believe, being fabricated currently and will be shipped over from, actually they're being made in England. I think we had 3 companies that were able to make those tiles. So when we put the bid out and we got those tiles, they're coming in. The scaffolding was necessary to do the investigation to the extent of damage on the dome. And it was more extensive than we realized going into that. So,
Are we still paying for the scaffolding then? Is that a daily rental, weekly?
It is part of the project. It is part of the project cost.
And again, though, why weren't the cable? Didn't you mean cables going up and down to the dome? Those KET cables, or what? Are those underground?
No, that's for your temporary chambers. The reason that I mentioned that was I had done a letter to Senator McDaniel and Representative Petrie, and one of the things that I had mentioned in the letter was that we expected substantial completion on the temporary chambers to occur December of 24, and that has not occurred. We expect that substantial completion to now be in April of 24, and part of that is some of the wiring that has to occur for the KT cameras, for your voting machines, for those things that are going to occur after the session closes this year.
Okay, but, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up again.
One more follow-up, sir, and I've got a list that I've got to get through here.
I'll just, why is it taking this long to be making bids? Still acquiring bids. Why wasn't that done 3 years ago?
On the capital, there was a lot
Yes.
of investigation that was done in the walls, underneath, in the structures of the building. There were many, part of the phases of it was to do a lot of investigation to try to have good bids, good costs, and to do some projection on what we would know we were getting into as we moved forward.
Okay, well, thank you.
Senator Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As it relates to the terrace, is there any concern that if it's not done now, that I think you said 40 million now, it's not in the budget, that there would be increased costs if we don't do it now in the future?
That's certainly an element of it.
Okay, that's not a calculation.
But it was such a big number.
Well,
we couldn't put it in.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, sir.
The reason I'm asking the questions, I just want to know, is that part of the calculation that for doing it now as opposed to doing it in the future?
Yeah, I would say some. There's always a market escalation, and given the construction markets out there, right, we've had increased costs. So yeah, it would be. Yeah, no question it would be cheaper today than it would be 5 years from now.
Thank you.
Secretary, if I could throw this in there, as somebody who hates getting last-minute notices that there's an alternate to a bid professionally, I would really like to see as part of the package an alternate to just go ahead and do that now, even if we know it's going to be a lot more, if the contractors could provide that. I mean, I know that we won't have that until the next budget session to be able to actually address. But it's, we may just make the decision to bite the bullet. I don't know, but I'd at least like to get a little more firm estimate of where that stands. Okay, Senator Givens.
Mr. Chairman, I have basically two questions, and I'll try to do one and then quickly do the other. For all those that may be watching and for the media to start broadcasting this information, we understand that there's been a date provided for public tours to end of the Capitol. And so for anyone that may be interested, do you happen to know the date by which the public should get in and do a tour if they wish to do a tour of the existing Capitol?
Well, right now, I don't know that we have set a hard date to end tours, but because we are going to be looking at those bids that come in on the 23rd. And we are, again, based on the bids coming in within what we anticipate. We are looking at construction that would begin in late June for the fourth floor work. So we would anticipate those tours would end in June, but we are looking at alternatives.
Yeah. But that's a good suggestion, Senator Givens. We'll get that information because I think that's a helpful thing to broadcast.
Good. And do we have a date that the governor's going to move out of his office?
We are still working on those schedules based on, the bids coming in. We are working off of approximate and estimates on those dates, but we are not holding anything hard and firm again at this juncture.
And that would include also the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the Court of Justice. Mm-hmm. But yeah, our key trigger date right now is May 23rd, which is the bid opening. Will the project be within budget?
And I'm confident you've made plans and preparations for where the governor's office is going to go. Where is the governor's office going to go?
We are looking at the state office building for the governor's office staff to go there.
And the lieutenant governor's, the old governor's mansion, for the governor's office itself.
Mm-hmm. Say that again.
The lieutenant governor's mansion, or the old governor's mansion, is right next to the history center downtown. That's where the governor's actual office will be. And as Secretary Johnson said, a lot of his staff will be over in the state office building across the street.
So downtown, that'll be a historic sort of vibe to it, won't it?
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah. So the governor's office will be there downtown, across from the history building. Good. Last quick question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the latitude. Provide us an update on the temporary building. I realize we're going to be, again, in that building. How long? How many sessions do we presume that we're going to be in the temporary building?
It'd be three sessions, as I recall.
That's correct.
Starting the 26th session
So 26,
through
27,
the 28th session.
26, 27, and 28.
Completion date, hopefully in time, so that the 29 session returns
Okay.
to our Capitol building.
And plans for that
Concluding
building
in time
once...
for the 29 session.
Okay, good. Plans for that building once we have finished the 28th session? What are the plans for that building?
The temporary chambers.
Yes.
Yeah. Right now we don't have those plans going forward for that building after that time.
I presume the building won't be left.
Well, it is a temporary.
Until something changes, I would agree that
Yes.
that we will remove the building.
Very good.
Yeah.
Chairman, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, if I could briefly, I think this would be a really good conversation for us to pick up again. If May 23rd is the bid date, maybe the first interim joint committee meeting of the Senate and House Appropriations and Revenue Committee needs to have this conversation again when we get back in June or July. So,
Agreed.
thank you.
Good, thank you. To the temporary chamber secretary, the schedule that was put out in June of 23 showed that being complete at the end of 24. In April of 24, it was the same. Your letter from November of 24 still showed end of 24. We're hardly, not even 90 days removed from the date of that letter, and this has now moved almost 5 months forward, or slipped 5 months. That's a pretty big miss in all of this. What happened?
Well, I think that the main elements of the building have been completed. There are issues, there are certain things that we cannot complete the building for your use until such time as you have completed certain things that you have to do here in session. We cannot move the desks. We cannot move some elements that have to do with the voting and things like that until you are completed with this session.
But are all final inspections and all punch lists complete at this date?
Charles, can you?
We expect, it's Charles Bush. We expect code review this month on the project.
But
And
that
there
was
were
supposed to have
some-
happened in December, per the November letter.
Okay. I also know that some of the delays were because of requests from LRC for different alterations in the chambers. And I don't have specifics on that, but I can get those for you.
If you would, particularly anything that any of those requests that would have been after November the 12th of
Certainly.
last year would be great.
Certainly.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Senator Mays Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chairman. I may be rehashing a question that you may have already answered. Chairman McDaniel asked about a potential budget request to do the trellises and the scaffolding and whatnot. Do you have a anticipated budget request to do for next year already in place? An estimate of what that might look like to do the work? It sounds like you're going to need more money.
Well, right now, we do have a cost estimate of that.
And
So,
what was
yeah,
that?
That was about a little over 40 million, for the terraces to be
That's it.
reconstructed.
That's the only number? That's the 40 million?
That's the major issue that in the investigations of the project that is kind of deemed left out. There were a number of other smaller items. We haven't yet determined whether or not we were going to seek future funds for that.
Okay.
But the terraces were the major issue.
With a major issue. And that's the one you're anticipating the budget ask for next year.
We haven't yet determined whether we were going to ask for that.
Okay. Fair enough. Just trying to make sure there wasn't a larger number out there
Sure.
than that, because I'd heard maybe there was a larger number. And then, two, I know sometimes this is such historic work and it's so hard to get the right expertise. Do you feel like we still have contractors and experts that can do the work available to us?
The answer is yes. I know Messer, who's the construction manager and general contractor, they've done, they call it a request for information, as they're trying to get a better estimate of cost in the individual items. So they have done over 200 of those, and working with other contractors in the region, with certain specializations because of the,
Right.
because of some of the plaster, for example, inside that building, which is very, very historic and different. So yeah, they believe they've got sufficient, interest and expertise.
That's good to hear. I just know we're in high demand. This is not an area, everyone's kind of doing this kind of work, and there's not a lot of experts and, just personnel to hire. And so every time you delay, you risk someone else picking up those experts and then going someplace else. And so that's really what I was curious about, if we still think we're on pair to have them. Thank you.
Senator Nunn. Did you? Oh, no, I just. Oh, okay. My bad. Senator Richardson.
Senator Mays Bledsoe, thank you for your question. That was certainly going to be one of mine. for my clarification, I just kind of want to back up. There will be construction starting this summer. Is that right?
Yes, that's the construction start date is right now is July 7th if everything goes well. And you know, and some of the, you know, comments that we would like to get feedback from the General Assembly on that contingency question.
Right. And then the only thing to kind of clarify from my understanding from what Chairman McDaniel's asked, the only thing that's left for the temporary chambers is just for the LRC to get their items and then the desk and things like that moved over. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. We have to get the final substantial completion sign off after we get everything in, but that's pretty much it. That and the canopy. Thank you.
Sure. Sure.
Canopy.
And bid packages will be reviewed in May. Is that correct?
May 23rd is when we finally do the reconciliation of all the bid packages with the estimates.
Or are all the bids in at this point?
No.
No, May 23rd is the deadline for bids for the biggest portion of the renovation.
Okay, so then they will be reviewed after that deadline, May 23rd. When will that review take place?
Quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Has a couple more questions here. Have we gotten the bid package back on the electric and early equipment procurement?
No, not yet. I think we had one bid, and so we're rebidding it.
Okay.
So it's underway, but we were, the very first bid, because of the lead time on the equipment, scheduled to obtain them, as you might imagine.
That switch gears hard right now.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What about the site and building utilities bid package?
It is due February 27th.
Okay.
Yeah, we will delay award until we see what the May 23rd bid does, but we are getting bids back here in this coming week.
So that one
This
is
week.
not, but that has not actually been sent to contract yet, though.
No.
Correct.
Okay. Last thing, Secretary, to your point on the contingency money, I think it would be very helpful for us if you guys would get us an official figure over. Just let us know exactly what the governor is thinking we will need on that. It's certainly a number that you guys have access to the experts that we don't necessarily have. So if you would get us kind of a final figure as to what you think is necessary, and then we can kind of go from there.
Will do.
Any other questions from the committee? All right, guys, thank you again for your time. We'll plan on, if you're getting bids back on May the 23rd, by the third week of June, you think we can chat on that?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Very good. All right. Thanks, guys. All right, Senator Maiden. Is he around? All right. Well, we're going to stand at ease for just a second or two, try to get Senator Maiden, Senator Wheeler back here, and then we'll pick back up in just a second. So Senator Wheeler's coming in the door right now, so we'll go ahead and
He
give
was
him a
voting
quick
on my
second here.
on my bill. Did y'all vote?
Senator Wheeler, did you vote yes on Senator Maiden's bill?
Well, I would have, but unfortunately, Senator Carpenter actually decided to ask a bunch of questions today, so we had to run out. That was so.
Yeah,
But
it's that time of session. But gentlemen, thank you both for your attendance today. When you start, I'm just going to ask you to identify yourself for the record here. But clearly, you represent a very large swath of Eastern Kentucky that has seen some pretty historic levels of devastation in the last several weeks. And Senator Wheeler, I know you personally are still pumping and digging out from this at your law offices. So, we just thought it would be wise at this point. We know that we're probably going to be called upon to act in short order, and thought it would be wise to hear from two of the people who are kind of at the epicenter of all this as to what's going on. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
well, Mr. Chairman, I want to personally thank you for reaching out to me as this happened and immediately offering any assistance that you could give the area once we have a firm grasp on what type of needs this very large region that was impacted has. In fact, I spent yesterday, I was in Pikeville with the interim FEMA director and my county judge, and Director Eric Gibson of the Emergency Management Services, talking about some of the great challenges that are going to be had in Eastern Kentucky in the days and weeks and months to come. Honestly, I'm blessed. We did get some water in the basement of our law office. We did lose a few files, but thanks to my law partner, my staff, we were able to get that out pretty quickly and get back up and going within 3 or 4 days. But there's going to be a lot of people that are going to maybe months and years before they get their lives together. And, considering the already struggling economy with some of the downturn in the coal industry and other traditional means of employment, this has been very devastating to the region. In my home county, I live in Pike County, which I think has been determined to be the worst hit by the flooding. I spoke to Judge Jones, his emergency management director, Nee Jackson, and his road foreman, Fabian Little, yesterday. Pike County currently has lost 11 bridges, one of which was a fairly recent construction that was over $1 million. Their preliminary estimates for the county roads in Pike County alone probably exceed $50 million, and that includes a lot of bank erosion, collapses. There's the school system. The Pike County school system remains closed, as well as the Pikeville Independent school system. My son attends Pikeville Independent. I graduated from that high school, and it flooded for the first time since 1977. Thankfully, that school was not significantly damaged, but there is a cleanup that's going on, and hopefully my son will be back in school tomorrow. But for the county, much larger area, Pike County, I think it's 787 square miles, largest county in the state. It may be yet several weeks. The road to the Elkhorn City Elementary and Middle School is a complete loss, complete collapse. Several of those schools are currently used as shelters right now for people that have lost individual homes. Mr. Chairman, I guess I had lived in Pike County since 1985, and I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I know that prior generations, older folks, there was a fairly bad flood in '84. '77 was bad, really bad, and I guess '57 was even worse. But to see businesses that you've shopped at your entire life, small businesses, clothing stores, pharmacies, grocery stores completely underwater is something that you don't get over real easy. I want to thank people on this committee. So many of you all sent text when it was going on, asking how I was, asking how my people are, and those texts really mean the world to me. I mean, really, when you get down here in a body as august as this, you know, you get around good people, educated people, passionate people that want to do better for the Commonwealth, but you also form a camaraderie amongst each other, a respect, of their knowledge, and particularly of people and their values. And that's all of us. I think that although we may disagree about some of the details, we all share a love for Kentucky. And you've expressed that as much as anybody, and I think that that really means a lot to me. Martin County, another county I represent that was already struggling, lost its only major retail grocery store. They had to evacuate, I believe, around 400 people from a housing project there with helicopters, Black Hawks. The National Guard and the first responders, I mean, I just can't thank those people enough. They have been out there getting to folks that normal vehicles just can't get to, providing them with food, providing them with water. But, you know, we've been through some bad stuff before, and we've gotten through it. The 2022 floods were pretty bad. This General Assembly stepped up. Our House and our Senate stepped up, and I know that you all will be for us, there for us again. And so I'm just grateful for this opportunity here today to present to you, and it's just a great honor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have the 5 counties: Floyd, Bell, Hardin, Letcher, and Knott. And you got a question, Mr. Okay. And you know, as if the flood wasn't bad enough, as the water went down, they got hit with 3 or 4 inches of snow and ice, and so really gathering information to get back to us has been very difficult, even though we're over a week into the flood now. And I've been really calling my judges and mayors and asking, hey, you know, and Philip and I've discussed this, you know, they've given us some preliminary numbers, and their preliminary numbers are mind-boggling. In my 5 counties, it's over 30 million. You know, that's roads and bridges and businesses affected in those 5 counties. Looks like 60 businesses, over 500 homes. I was in Floyd County Monday with Representative Tackett Lafferty, and we met with the judge and all their mayors, and it was an odd situation. In 2022, they had much more public damage and lost 225 homes that were mitigated out, you know, with FEMA. This time, they've got less public damage, even though they're at $10 million. They've got 450 plus homes that they've already identified, and most of those are totally damaged and probably will be mitigated. So you're talking about 450 homes. They lost 250 in Floyd County 2 years ago. You start talking about tax base and people leaving the community, and so not only is the disaster itself going to be expensive and tough, you know, now they're starting to be concerned about, you know, their folks leaving and the property being abandoned, you know, to for those type things. So you know, it's my district was probably not as hit as bad. My whole district was not hit as bad as Senator Wheeler's Pike County was, but Floyd and Knott, the 2 counties that are close to Pike County, are the worst, of course. And I understand that the governor is in Perry and Knott today, and Perry County, I guess, would be in one of those top 5 counties that got hit hard in the mountains. Pikeville being the worst, and Martin and Floyd and Knott and Perry were, I guess, were probably the 5 that got hit the hardest. But you know, preliminary numbers, and they've not, you know, they not even got the mud moved back, and the water's still up. When I drove to Floyd County Monday, the Corps still holding water in Leslie County, and some of those counties won't let the water out, and we still have people trapped in Leslie County. It's not my district, but that's Senator Smith's, and you know, and I asked him, you know, what that's about, and it's a lengthy story, but we still have people that are blocked in. and a couple counties, and Leslie one of them. I mean, you can see the water when you drive from the interstate, that the boats that people have pulled up on the bank that they're getting back and forth to their homes with. So it's not our first rodeo with floods. It's a pretty common thing in the mountains, but this flood is definitely going to be in the top 4 or 5 that we've got hit with in my lifetime. In '77, when I was 16 years old, we had a major one in Pineville where I live. Of course, they built a $60 million flood wall. After that, we lost about 75 homes, which was devastating to a small community of 3,000 when you lose 75 homes. So that's some of the concerns and worries that our elected officials in those counties are thinking about now. How many times is FEMA going to come in and pay those people? They're, once they do that a few times, they finally start mitigating and buying them out and moving them out. So, that's concerns our local governments have now that we're going to lose people, in Pineville and Bell County. I live right on the state line, and when they did that, most of that population moved across the line into Tennessee. We lost them. Not only did we lose them in our town, in our county, we lost them plumb to another state because we were right on the line. So, you don't think about those things in emergencies, but that's some of the, I commend Judge Williams for his, extended thinking there, that, thinking that, he's going to lose some of his population, his tax base and things like that. So, but I'm like Senator Wheeler. I appreciate you all, even the concerns, and I had a lot of calls also, and people willing to help. And it's going to be a long recovery, but going to be very costly.
Gotcha. Well, gentlemen, thank you. We got one question right now from Senator Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't even know how to respond to what I hear, and I've been following this. It's devastating. But I want to understand. I'm going to put two things into one. I know you want to get out of here. We have a time problem. With respect to workers in the area, is there some intentionality in making sure that we use workers in that area and Kentucky workers in terms of the rebuild? I don't know if there's some thinking going into that. And secondly, you mentioned the flood wall after that devastating flood some time ago. I know how challenging the mountains can be. I'm wondering if there's some advanced planning that's going on, anticipating maybe perhaps something in the future, and whether that's on the table as well.
Senator Neal, I guess to briefly answer your questions, I know last time in the 2022 flooding, I think the state hired a general contractor that I believe was Ashbrit, which is out of Florida, but does national flood relief. But they did coordinate and hire local contractors to do a lot of the debris removal. In fact, they reached out to me for recommendations of people that I knew in good standing and things. And so I do believe that there were quite a few local people employed, which is obviously what we want. To answer your second question, I can speak to Pike County individually. I know, in fact, this General Assembly, I think about 4 years ago, I believe it was during my first full term, did give some money, I guess, for a state match on a larger federal project, but it's a 20 or 30 year project that does include multifaceted flood walls, raising the elevation of homes and businesses, and I think it's I can't remember what the number is. I think they call it a 202 project, but it's through the Army Corps of Engineers. I think Congressman Rogers had really been working on it for some time, but it is a long-term project. It's not anything that's going to be done in the next 2 or 3 years, and clearly it wasn't in place at the time of this flood. But I guess Pineville had a good mayor that got started early on that, so he's got his town taken care of. So now he's down here to kind of maybe lead the way on some of this other stuff. I'm grateful to serve with Scott, but I do appreciate your personal concern that you've expressed, and I think your points are very valid ones.
I would say this, Senator Neal. Senator Webb filed a bill Friday that I think will give us some clarification and some much needed information for flood control. And one of the main things that we need in eastern Kentucky is we need our creeks and rivers dredged and trees cut back. And so what happens when, the water gets up and big trees and trash will go down and they'll get lodged in these trees in the river, and then it backs the water up, which winds up causing more damage that probably wouldn't have happened if that stuff wasn't in the creek, that it'd keep moving and going on. So I was glad that Senator Webb filed that Friday, that will give some hopeful clarification and some solutions to some of the things that we need to do in the future. But, if I could say, naturally flood walls would be great, but that's very expensive. But something that would help us tremendously if we could clean, dredge, cut trees on our rivers and banks, and would give a lot of, and I think it wouldn't alleviate all the flooding, of course, but it sure would help a lot.
Yeah, gentlemen, we certainly know each of you come from varied backgrounds, and one of the good things about the General Assembly is we get people with all different types of expertise, be it the law or the environment down there or local government and such. So, and you certainly have kept a great deal of contact and are serving as a great intermediary for your districts up here, understanding the needs, the finance, the future for your districts. And I'm sure we will keep that conversation advancing through the next couple of weeks here as we've got to make our final financial decisions on that. But we certainly appreciate your attendance today and your ongoing work on behalf of your districts and your region as a whole. So, all right, seeing no other business to come in front of this committee, we're going to stand adjourned.